Thanksgiving was supposed to bring comfort, laughter, full plates, and a sense of home. Instead, it felt like a setup. I pulled into Brittany's driveway with Emma and Jonah in the back seat, both dressed up and excited. I had told them this year would be different. I believed it. The second we stepped inside, though, I knew I was wrong. The air was stiff, thick with something unspoken. No hugs, no, "So glad you're here." Just Brittany with that fake, polished grin she wore when she was pretending not to judge me. "Oh, I made a special spot just for you," she chirped, guiding us away from the warm glow of the living room, down the hallway, through the laundry area, and into the garage. "It's quiet. You'll love it." The moment the door shut behind us, I felt like the door to the family had too. The garage was freezing and reeked of gasoline. 3 plastic chairs circled a shaky card table. On it were a few cold sides dumped into mismatched Tupperware, clear leftovers from whatever real dinner was happening inside. They didn't even bother pretending we were part of it. I could hear them laughing. Every clink of a glass, every cheer from the dining room slammed into me like a cruel reminder of where we weren't welcome. Just one wall away, warmth wrapped around people who used to be mine. But in that garage, the cold wasn't just physical. It was emotional exile. And then I looked at Emma. Her little smile trembled at the edges, eyes wide, fighting tears she didn't want me to see. That look, God, that look, hit harder than anything Brittany could have said or done. She was trying so hard to be okay, to not ask why we were being treated like we didn't matter. My kids felt it now, the rejection, the invisible lines drawn between us and them. I swallowed hard, tried to ground myself, but my hands were shaking. I sat at the edge of the folding table, staring at my plate as it grew cold, untouched. The food was supposed to mean celebration. Instead, it tasted like pity. From the other side of the house, Brittany's voice rose, fake enthusiasm dripping off every word. "Isn't this stuffing just perfect?" she chirped, loud enough to be heard in here, as if she was performing for an audience, as if we didn't exist. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep it together. I wanted to scream, to storm into that dining room and demand they look at us. Really look. But I didn't. I stayed. For Emma. For Jonah. Because if I let the rage win, then they'd carry that chaos too. No, this wasn't what I had pictured when we arrived. I came hoping for peace. What I got was a quiet reminder that we were no longer part of the story. I came here hoping maybe, just maybe, we could patch things up. I wanted to believe that time had softened the cracks in our broken bond. Instead, I felt like a stranger who'd accidentally walked into someone else's reunion. The celebration was clearly for them, not for me, not for us. We were extras in a scene that didn't want us. Everyone inside was immersed in their own warm little bubble, laughing, swapping stories, passing dishes we hadn't even seen. It was clear. We weren't welcomed, just tolerated. Like guests they didn't want but couldn't fully turn away. That realization hit hard, tightening something deep in my chest that no cold turkey or canned cranberries could explain. Across the table, Emma sat silently, wringing her tiny hands in her lap, like she was trying to hold herself together. I could see it all over her. She kept glancing toward the dining room door, eyes flicking like she was listening for a cue to be included, one that never came. It wasn't just me. Emma could feel it too, that invisible wall separating us from them. Watching her try to understand something so cruel made my stomach knot in guilt and helplessness. How do I tell her that family doesn't always mean love? That sometimes you're written out of the story without warning? How do I explain that we're no longer us to them? Jonah sat beside her, poking at his mashed potatoes, but his eyes kept drifting toward the other room. drawn to the sound of the world he used to belong to. He hadn't asked anything yet, but I could feel the questions forming. He'd want to know why we were exiled to a garage, why everyone else forgot we existed, why the people who once called us theirs now acted like we were strangers. I didn't have answers, just a deep, aching silence where explanations should have been. There was no version of the truth simple enough for children to carry. All I could hope was that they'd learn to read between the silences. The coldness around us was the message, and sooner or later, they'd understand it too clearly. But I wasn't ready for those questions. Not yet. I gripped my glass so hard my knuckles ached, like if I held tight enough, I could hold myself together. The tears I'd been holding back all evening were starting to rise, stubborn and uninvited. I blinked fast, trying to chase the sting away, but the lump in my throat had planted itself deep. That old, bitter sting of being pushed aside by your own blood. It hit me all over again, sharp and hot in my chest. Why did I even come? What was I expecting? Some miracle? What's the point in trying to glue together something that's already shattered beyond repair? The rage was boiling just under my skin, but I swallowed it down like poison. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction, not here, not while my kids were watching. I looked at my kids, my world, the only thing in this room that still felt like home. Even as everything inside me crumbled, I had to hold the pieces still. For them. I had to be strong. I didn't have a choice. Even if it meant choking down silence, faking calm while every nerve in my body screamed, this wasn't okay. I could already hear the questions forming in their little minds. Ones I had no answers for, Jonah would ask. Emma would stare at me with those two wise eyes, and I still wouldn't know what to say. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, just to stop the tears. I reached for Emma's hand, trying to offer something real in a space that had none. Just a touch, a quiet vow that I wouldn't let this moment define us. Her little fingers squeezed back, and that tiny warmth steadied me more than she'll ever know. It wasn't everything, but for a fleeting second, it was enough. The dining room door creaked. I froze, half expecting a sarcastic remark or a pitying glance, but no one entered. Of course they didn't. The laughter got louder, like it wanted to drown us out. They were celebrating, toasting, sharing joy, and we were ghosts, forgotten just a room away. But I couldn't just walk out, not with Emma and Jonah watching. I wanted to run, to slam that door and never look back. But I stayed rooted, breathing through the storm. If I left, what would that tell my kids? That family is disposable? That being unwanted means you stop trying? So I stayed. I stayed for them, for Emma's hope, for Jonah's innocence. Even if the house turned to ice, even if every shared memory with these people faded into something bitter, I'd endure it. For them. In that cold, echoing kitchen, surrounded by the ghost of a celebration we weren't part of, I found something steady in the silence, my own resolve. Maybe this too was part of our story, a bitter chapter we had no choice but to read together. The silence from the dining room wasn't just quiet, it was suffocating, a loud kind of emptiness pressing on my lungs. I heard them, cutlery, laughter, wine glasses, living in a world that had clearly moved on without me. The tension sat in my gut like a stone, heavy, familiar. I knew this feeling too well. I hadn't touched my plate. I didn't come here hungry, for food at least. My thoughts were a storm, memories, questions, regrets, swirling ever since I stepped across Brittany's polished hardwood floor. I glanced toward the hall where my parents had disappeared, their muted voices fading like they had every time I needed them most. They were still there, just out of reach, keeping their distance in that way they'd mastered over the years. My chest tightened. This wasn't new. This was just the latest flare-up of a wound that had never healed. But tonight, the space between us felt like a canyon, and I wasn't sure I even wanted to build the bridge anymore. What little we had left was rotting beneath the weight of years of silences, slights, and swallowed pain. And all I could think was, why has it always been like this? Then Jonah spoke, his small voice snapping me out of the spiral like a sudden jolt. "Mom, why won't they talk to us?" he asked. Software, careful, crushing. The question hit harder than anything Brittany had said all night. It was the one question I'd always dreaded, because I knew it was coming. It didn't just cut to the heart. It was the heart of everything. The growing gulf, the cold war of avoidance and polite rejection. It had finally reached my kids. I felt it land on my shoulders, like it had been waiting there all along. I turned toward Jonah, his big eyes wide with confusion, hurt, and something I hoped wasn't disappointment. My heart sank when I saw it, the doubt creeping into his trust, into me. Emma sat across from Jonah, quiet as ever, but her eyes kept bouncing between us, searching, analyzing, absorbing. The room was thick with unspoken questions. Emma hadn't voiced hers yet, but they were there, waiting behind her steady stare. I could see it in her gaze, sharp and unsettled. She sensed the fracture, the growing crack between us and everyone else. She heard the laughter from the next room, heard the grown-ups sharing jokes and secrets like we didn't even exist out here. Her posture told the truth. Shoulders hunched like mine, as if somehow she was carrying a burden far too grown for her little frame. My throat tightened again, thick with emotion I didn't know where to put. I didn't know how to answer, how to protect and be honest at the same time. The truth felt too cruel for hearts still learning what love should feel like. How could I explain the broken promises, the unanswered calls, the birthdays skipped, the silences that screamed louder than words? How do I tell them their own family made us feel like ghosts? I didn't want to pass my pain down like an heirloom, but I couldn't lie either, not to their faces, not to those eyes. I took a breath, shakier than I wanted, and reached for the stem of my untouched wine glass like it might anchor me. Just the feel of it grounded me for a second. A quiet act of control when everything else was slipping. Jonah was still watching me, his eyes wide and waiting for something I wasn't sure I could give. I looked down, my fingers clenched in my lap like I was bracing for impact. Focus, I told myself. Forget the ache. Forget the chaos in your head. Just look at them. Just be here. They're just busy, sweetheart, I said, almost whispering, each word feeling like it might crack. The lie floated out on my breath, delicate and useless. I could feel the tension climb back into my shoulders, my chest clenching like I might fall apart mid-sentence. I forced a smile that felt about as real as plastic. Sometimes people just get caught up talking and they forget to look around, I added, trying to sound convincing, mostly to myself. Jonah's face scrunched up, and I knew I hadn't fooled him. Not even a little. Jonah dropped his gaze, silently tracing the edge of his glass with one finger, like he was drawing circles around something he didn't understand. I swallowed hard, my mind spinning with words I didn't know how to say. I wanted to tell him none of this was his fault, that he and Emma were cherished beyond words, but part of me wasn't even sure that was true anymore. I couldn't convince myself, so how could I convince them? Then Emma's voice cut through the silence, small but heavy with the kind of knowing a child shouldn't have. "Do you think they love us, Mom?" she asked, just like that, bare, brutal. That question sliced right through me, clean, precise, devastating. My breath caught like something inside me had snapped tight. I didn't expect her to say it out loud, not so soon, not with that much clarity. I had prayed I could keep that pain away from them, just for a little while longer. But there it was. No preamble, no soft landing, just truth. It wasn't just about tonight. It was about all the birthdays, the Christmas cards never sent, the way love sometimes forgets to show up. I closed my eyes and let the question sink into my stomach like a stone. I knew I couldn't just say yes and make it true, not in a way that would reach them. How do you explain the ache of a family that slowly drifted into silence without making it sound like a betrayal? How do you admit that sometimes love isn't loud enough to echo across years of disappointment? I opened my eyes and met Emma's, big, round, and impossibly trusting. My heart clenched so tightly I thought I might break right there. How could I make her believe she was loved when the people who were supposed to show it didn't? I forced a smile that felt too big for my face, my chest pulling tighter with each breath. "Of course they do, sweetheart," I said gently, though it felt like I was reading someone else's script. "Sometimes people love you in their own broken ways, and sometimes they forget how to show it. But that doesn't mean it's not there." Emma didn't look convinced, but she nodded, quietly turning her eyes back to the table, like she didn't want to press anymore. The silence that followed was stretched thin, like a fraying string holding the moment together. I felt the full, quiet weight of my own brokenness settle on my shoulders again, but I couldn't stop now. I had to keep pretending, for them, for just a little longer. I had to keep pretending. If not for me, then for them, for the two pairs of eyes that still searched me for safety. Jonah stayed silent, curling his fingers into his shirt like he was holding himself together, one thread at a time. His gaze was down, but in his eyes, something shifted, a quiet knowing I wasn't sure he should have yet. The soft light of his childhood was dimming, replaced by a new, painful clarity, the realization that not all families feel like home. I looked toward the dining room again, where my parents still lingered behind their laughter, not once glancing this way. They hadn't spoken to Emma or Jonah. Not a single word, not even a glance. I didn't know how much longer I could keep the facade up, but I knew I couldn't let it slip. Not in front of them. Not now. I took a long breath and rested my hand on Jonah's arm, offering a squeeze that I hoped felt steadier than I did inside. "We'll be okay," I whispered. Even though the words scratched against the lump in my throat, I didn't know if I believed it, but I had to say it, because they needed me to believe it, even if it was only for show. The silence between us stretched wide, full of things we were too afraid to say aloud. I sat at the kitchen table, gripping its edge so hard my knuckles turned pale, like if I let go, I'd fall apart. My entire body was taut, stretched thin by the pressure of staying composed, one wrong breath away from snapping. Emma and Jonah sat across from me, watching closely, eyes flickering with confusion, worry, and quiet desperation for a sign I was still okay. I gave them a smile, a strange, thin thing that never reached my eyes. My heart was too heavy for anything more. Jonah, my quiet observer, had gone still, his toy forgotten in his lap. His hands were folded neatly, his gaze low, but every few seconds he peeked up at me like he was trying to find the version of me who made everything feel safe. I could see the wheels turning in his young mind, trying to map the storm that had been silently brewing in our family long before he had words for it. The way Jonah's doubt lingered in the air, it pulled at something raw inside me. But Emma had always seen too much, too clearly, too soon. She sat back, arms folded, her brows drawn tight, like she was putting together a puzzle no child should ever have to solve. She wasn't asking to be comforted. She was demanding the truth, even if it hurt. I felt it in her stare, the weight of everything I hadn't said pressing out from her silence. She'd always been the brave one, the one unafraid to pry into the places I tried so hard to bury deep. Mom. Her voice was soft, sharp, like a whisper that shattered everything. My chest seized up. The knot in my gut twisted tighter. I knew what was coming and still wasn't ready. I didn't want to face this. Didn't want to say out loud the words I'd kept locked away for years, but I could feel it. I didn't get to run this time. The truth always finds its crack. No matter how tightly you seal the door, it creeps in when you're weakest. Do you still love them? She asked, calm, controlled, but the weight in her voice hit like thunder. Even after what they did, after all these years of pretending we don't exist, do you still love them? Her question didn't just hang, it landed, heavy, raw, and for a second, everything else in the room froze. I didn't even know how deep I'd buried that part of myself until she dug it up with one sentence. I had stuffed so much away just to keep functioning, to keep being okay, to hold us all together. But with Emma's question, it all came crashing back. Every unanswered text, every night I lay awake, hoping the phone would ring, every hope that maybe this time they'd show up. I don't know, I whispered. The words tumbled out before I could build another wall to stop them. I closed my eyes tight, digging my fingers into the table like it might hold me steady as I started to slip into memories I'd sworn to forget. My voice cracked, thin and unfamiliar. I don't know if I can love them the way I used to. I want to. God, I want to. But the silence, the space, it changes you. It changes everything. Emma didn't say anything right away. She just sat there, quietly absorbing my words with a depth that felt far too old for her age. Slowly, she unfolded her arms and leaned in, her eyes locked on mine, steady, searching, heartbreakingly grown. There was no blame in her expression, just a quiet acknowledgement that I was wrestling with something too big for words. But the silence between us was still heavy, like her question hadn't been answered at all, just redirected. Then Jonah broke the silence, his voice barely above a whisper, delicate, like something fragile about to crack. So, does that mean we're never going to see them again? He asked, lips trembling, as if saying it out loud made it real. His question was innocent, but it sliced clean through me. I could hear the fear laced through every syllable. The fear that the version of family he believed in, holidays, hugs, grandma's apple pie, was fading into memory. I swallowed hard, that stubborn lump in my throat growing bigger with each second I couldn't answer him. I wanted to grab him, hold him tight, lie if I had to, tell him it would all be okay. But I couldn't say it. Not when I didn't know if it was true. I couldn't promise him a bridge that might never be built. I don't know, baby, I said softly, my voice cracking under the weight of all the things I'd tried to hold back. I don't know if they'll come back, and even if they do, I don't know if they'll ever really see us the way we deserve to be seen. Jonah's bottom lip trembled, and my heart stabbed itself from the inside. He didn't deserve this. None of this. Neither of them did. I never meant to drag them into this storm between generations. I never wanted them to carry the fallout of a family that forgot how to hold itself together. Emma reached across the table, placing her small hand over Jonah's. She gave him the kind of comfort I couldn't seem to summon in that moment. It was such a simple thing, but enough to crack the silence and remind me that even in all this hurt, they still had each other. They still had that quiet love between siblings, uncertain but pure. And maybe for now, that was something to hold on to. I took in a ragged breath and quickly wiped at my eyes before the tears could fully fall. I couldn't fall apart. Not now. Not while they were still looking at me like I might have answers. They needed me to be steady, to lead them through this wreckage, even if I didn't have a map. "We'll figure it out," I said, the words sounding stronger than I felt inside. "We'll find our way, but right now, we have each other, and maybe that's enough." Emma gave a small nod, her face softening as if the weight had eased just a little. Jonah didn't look convinced, but he leaned in just slightly, as if the words gave him a ledge to hold on to. We sat there in that fragile stillness, the weight of it all still in the air, but something softer had settled between us too. My chest still hurt. Everything still felt cracked and uncertain. But I could breathe again. Just a little. But looking at Emma and Jonah, I knew this. No matter what happened with my parents, no matter how broken that tie became, I had a new center now, a family to guard, to grow with, a family that believed in me, even when I wasn't sure I believed in myself, and for now, that faith was enough to keep me standing. The next few days felt like limbo. Nothing moved, like the air itself had paused to catch its breath. I couldn't shake the heaviness in the house. It settled in like fog. The house, once alive with noise and movement, now felt like it had been muted. Both Emma and Jonah had begun folding inward, piece by piece. Emma, usually my little spark, now stared out windows more than she spoke. Jonah had gone almost silent. His eyes said everything he wouldn't say aloud. I tried everything. Cookies, games, park picnics, anything to lift the fog. But nothing cleared the air. It felt like something between us had frayed, worn down by truths none of us had the courage to say out loud. I felt it too, a drifting inside me I didn't want to admit. I'd never been one to shy from hard conversations or hide behind silence. But this wasn't just hard. This was layered, heavy, personal. The past I'd spent years outrunning had finally caught up to my doorstep, and it wasn't knocking anymore. It was banging. I knew I had to face it, not just for me, but for them, for Emma and Jonah. They deserved more than silence. The thought of Jonah and Emma growing up tangled in the same questions I never got answers to filled me with a guilt that clung like smoke. They deserved clarity, something solid to stand on. But how do you guide someone out of a maze when you're still lost inside it yourself? Every night, after the kids were asleep, I'd find myself hunched over the kitchen table, staring into a lukewarm mug of tea while my thoughts unraveled in circles. The house used to hum with movement. Now it just echoed. The refrigerator buzzed, the curtains whispered, but somehow everything felt too loud and too silent all at once. My hands, once soothed by routine, trembled as I rinsed dishes, folded towels, wiped counters. The rhythm brought no peace. The comfort I used to find in the small tasks had gone missing, as if the house no longer recognized me. What began as a whisper of unease had become a steady pulse, gnawing at the back of my mind. One night, as I sat in that heavy quiet, the phone rang, splitting the silence like glass cracking. My heart jumped when I saw the name on the screen, Mom. I stared at it, frozen, while 100 memories sprinted through my head all at once. I hadn't really spoken to her in years, not without bitterness layered beneath every word. Our last conversation had ended in sharp edges, words we couldn't take back, wounds we never dressed. I chose to walk away, to protect what was left of me from the mess we had made of our relationship. And yet here it was, her name glowing on my screen like a ghost dragging behind it years I had tried to bury. I wanted to let it ring, pretend I never saw it, let it disappear like all the chances before. But I couldn't. Not this time. Not tonight. Not with Emma's question still echoing in my skull like a soft alarm I couldn't shut off. Why don't you talk to Grandma anymore, Mom? My heart thudded beneath my ribs, each beat echoing Emma's voice louder than the last. Could I really look away again? Could I still pretend silence was safer than truth? Could I really keep hiding the truth from them, the same truth that shaped so much of who I'd become? I shut my eyes for just a second, and the ache, old, familiar, rose in my chest like it never left. And then I breathed in, shaky and unsure, and picked up. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was quiet, tentative, and unmistakably hers, my mother. We didn't speak, not at first. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was full of everything we never said. It felt suffocating, like standing inside a memory you've tried to outrun. Then her voice came through, soft, cracked around the edges, fragile in a way I hadn't expected. "Rachel, it's me." Those 3 words didn't land. They hovered, trembling. And for a second I couldn't breathe. That sentence carried years, decades, every tear, every silence. My mother, the woman who was once my whole world, was calling me. The same woman who walked away without looking back. After the silence, the birthdays missed, the letters unsent, she was here. "I know," I whispered, because it was the only thing I could say without falling apart. It was all I could get out. My throat was tight, my breath uneven. I clung to the moment like it might collapse. Even those 2 words felt foreign, stiff on my tongue. "I know it's been a long time." Then the silence came back, slow and stretching like elastic. She sighed, and in that sound I heard every year we'd lost. "I've thought about you, about us, so many times," she said, "and I know I hurt you. I carry that regret every day. I'm sorry, Rachel." My heart clenched so hard I had to grip the edge of the table. I'd spent years convincing myself I didn't need her. I'd stacked my walls high and deep and told myself they were enough, but her voice, shaky and sincere, made those walls feel like paper. One more word and they'd collapse. "I don't even know what to say," I said, my voice trembling like a child again. "I don't know if we can go back. There's just so much between us now. Too much." "I get that," she replied, her voice both gentle and certain. It felt like she'd been waiting years for me to answer. "I don't expect a miracle. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I'm here, and I'll listen, if you'll let me. I just want to find my way back to you," she said. "Even if it's slow, even if it's just one step." I exhaled slowly, the breath trembling out of me like a truth I didn't know I was holding. It wasn't what I was bracing for. I'd expected sharp words, pride, not this quiet softness, not this quiet ache in her voice, this willingness to come closer instead of defending the distance. Part of me ached to reach through the phone, to set down the pain I'd carried for years and believe, just for a second, that maybe something could shift. But the part of me that knew how it felt to be broken, she wasn't ready to risk being shattered again. I was scared of what might come through the door if I opened it, even a crack. What if nothing had changed? "I don't know what this even looks like," I said slowly, measuring every word. "But maybe we can try." Her answer came quick, one soft breath, one fragile exhale, like she'd been holding it for years. "Thank you," she whispered. "That's more than I hoped for." We didn't end the call with closure, just a pause. A fragile, uncertain pause that felt more honest than any goodbye. I knew this hadn't fixed anything. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But something had cracked. A fracture in the wall I'd built to survive. And maybe, just maybe, that crack meant a beginning. For the first time in what felt like forever, something inside me loosened, like I could finally take a full breath. I didn't know what healing would look like, or how long it would take to patch up years of silence and sharp words. But for once, I believed it wasn't impossible. There was space now, just a sliver, but enough for forgiveness to maybe grow. And for now, that sliver was enough. It had to be.